All right.
But I'm just logging into the.
That's fine. So where should we start today?
Do we want to go like book by book, maybe?
Okay.
Yeah, and
don't
we could
have
go
to.
like the readings out of the books or whatever.
Do you
And
want to know our opinions on the books?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. So I didn't actually have the Blacker Than the Berry book, but I I read or watched the reading of it. It like took me all the way until like the girl with the reddish hair and like the light skin, like her poem, for me to catch on that it was about more than one girl. Like I was like, oh, what? And so I had to like start over, and I was like, oh, it's about like each poem's about each girl.
Yeah.
I don't know. What grade level do you guys think like this would be like a good book for?
Maybe like third.
Because I think second or third would be good because mostly just because it has larger vocabulary. But I think some of the ideas from it could be good for younger kids. Like I talked about in my post how one of my gut reactions, I remembered a kindergarten teacher I know, she did an assignment where the kids did a portrait of themselves. And then they put that on a poster, and the poster said, my name is blank, and my skin is the color of, and then they got to pick something that they felt their skin was the color of. So there was a lot of, my skin is the color of sand, my skin is the color of chocolate, my skin is the color of caramel. And so that was a really good assignment, sort of to like get the idea flowing through their head. So I think that that's one way that this could be used for the younger kids. And in terms of like really reading it and understanding it, I think older, yeah.
I think it could be used for any grade. I mean, probably like kindergarten to first, you would probably, I don't know about vocab, but like these are concepts that any grade can learn from, and it's really high quality poems, I think, for any grade.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they were like, I don't know. I personally really liked this book because I thought, yeah, it had like good poems and it discusses kind of like it. Each girl is unique, and I thought they were really like cool to like, and you could focus on like the type of like pictures that the author is like bringing up through her, like what words she chooses and that kind of stuff. I thought was really cool. So.
And who's writing? Sorry, who's writing the muddy things?
Many questions?
The muddy things.
Muddy questions.
I can write them.
Okay.
Let me go.
I was like, I can write them. That works too.
Do you have a pen? Do you have a pen? Do you have a pen? Okay. You can go.
Cool.
I get the article Seeing Color.
That was really interesting. I liked it because the whole idea of colorblind racism has been relatively new to me. And it was one of those things that like I hadn't really heard of or been made aware of for like until a couple years ago. And I think that it's super important because it's really easy to do. Like a lot of people think that, oh, you notice that that person is Black, or if you say something like this Black person or this Asian person or those sorts of things, then people automatically think you're racist because you see the color or you see the difference. That gets in the way of that gets in the way of appreciating the culture. Because if you're not willing to recognize it, then you're not willing to appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like before like this year, I never thought of like color blindness as like a bad thing, you know, because I was like, oh yeah, you're not really like really focusing on this idea of like skin color and race, but then like yeah, taking some more classes and like reading articles similar to these, I realized like that's really ignoring who these people are, and like it's really important to like notice that for them, because then you can help like celebrate these like qualities and you know, learn more about the differences we have, which would make us unique. Yeah, so I thought it was like a really good article, and like it has like a pull out quote, and it's like, to say you don't see color is to say you don't see children.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, like in your face, like exactly. I think it's like straight to the point. Like, you really have to notice those differences and like, you know, value those, that each child brings this different part into the classroom. So
one muddy question. Sorry, someone else go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
I was just gonna say I took this class my freshman year at college. It was Social 269. I don't know if any of you have taken it, but
is it the race and ethnicity?
Something similar.
Yeah. So in that he like showed this experiment that, you know, someone did, and they like showed faces of people, you know, and it was kind of like, do you guys remember like Guess Who, like the game?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was like that, and so like obviously one of the easiest things to like get out like half the people is to say like, oh, is like your person black or is your person white? And like 95% of the people playing the game would not do that, like would not ask that question, because it's like, because I think like I've heard from like my parents that are like older and like more conservative and such, like that the best way to like treat kids all equally is just to not say anything about their color of the skin. So I feel like that was like a really popular thing, maybe. I don't know for sure. Like that was like how we dealt with racism before. Like, oh, you just pretend it's not there and then everything's fine. So I just thought that was interesting. And like it is like it's common. Like people will avoid the topic of like people's skin color.
Mm-hmm. Because I think it's like it can be a really difficult conversation, or people kind of get uncomfortable talking about that, and so they're just like, I think it's just like the idea of not really talking about it.
Yeah,
them is better than.
My parents are sort of like, they can kind of flop back and forth sometimes. Sometimes they're really liberal, sometimes they're a little conservative, and like there was one muddy question that I have is sort of like, are there times where it's okay to ignore race, or it's even better to ignore race? Because there have been times where like I was complaining to my parents about a parent at work that was like being rude or wasn't listening, and there was once I was doing that and my mom goes, what? She was like, was he Mexican? Or like, was he this? And I'm like, or she was like, what ethnicity was he? And I looked at her and I go, it doesn't matter. And I feel like that's in the moment what I needed to do, because I know my mom and I know that she would have like made a stereotype after that. And so I would shut down the conversation. And like,
once you say that, then they're just gonna keep building on the stereotype. Like it's just gonna like influence that stereotype more, like make them think that it's true, you know?
And it was sort of, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
I think in that situation, what you were doing, Nicole, isn't, I wouldn't call it ignoring race, but because I don't know, that just doesn't sound right. But like, you were keeping the race from becoming, you know, the overarching topic. Like, we're not talking about race right now. We're talking about, you know, manners and boundaries, and it has nothing to do with race. I'm not ignoring it, but it has nothing to do with this at the moment.
Yeah.
So
I
guess it does make sense.
Yeah. And so I guess like my muddy question is, are there times where it's appropriate to ignore race?
Like I feel like this kind of leads into like, you know how like I feel like people have been talking about how like for population census like statuses and stuff, like Like, is that something that would be acceptable to ignore race on? Like, why does it matter what race? I don't know.
I feel like maybe for immigration purposes, it might be better to have ethnicity as like one of those boxes that you check. Just so, like, oh, we have a lot of people coming in from Mexico, or we have a lot of people coming in from Europe, like, or some sort of thing. Like, I feel like that's the only, like, that's one of the only valid reasons I can come up with as to why that would be on the census.
I do know though that there has been like some debate, like, I think it's like adding more, because I know it used to be like really limited, and so people felt like they couldn't really like choose one, and that was hard. Yeah, but then also I think like too, yeah, it's important then I guess to know, at least for me, like from my mindset, to know what the minorities are, because I know like we are like noticing that there's an increase in like Latino and that kind of thing, and they may not be the majority in like I think it's like 10 years or something like that. And to me that's like important to know, like, oh, there's this big like increase or whatever, but at the same time, like, is like, do you really need to know that? Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I think it's one of those situations where it entirely depends on how it's being used.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that once, like, because it is estimated that like white people will be the minority soon in the U.S., do you think that then?
I think I've seen that somewhere.
Do you think that people will start referring to then like white people as minorities? You know how like a lot of times we'll like group together a lot of races as they're
like the minority group or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so because history. Because we have so much history and like so much stuff in the structure of our society that gives the privilege to the white, and then that kind of thing. And so it wouldn't change just because the numbers have changed. To say that nothing will change just because the numbers change.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be interesting to see if Victoria had a broader answer for that, or like knew more.
Yeah,
we can.
Because that would be a question.
Mm-hmm. Like, what sort of effects might come up, or results might come up when white people become the minority?
Yeah.
So that's one of our medical.
Like maybe even if. Well, that just makes me think of like in like the South pre-Civil War, like there were a lot of like Haiti, white people were clearly the minority. There were way more black people as slaves than white people, but the white people were dominating over the black people because they were their slaves, and so. But then this isn't slave time, so there's slightly different implications.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly was the question? Like, what would happen if?
We sort of had two. Like, are there times where it is appropriate or even beneficial to ignore race, ethnicity, or more like skin color?
Okay.
And then what results might come up when white people are the minority?
Okay. Is anyone keeping a stopwatch?
We'll put 11. Yeah, just 11 minutes.
Okay.
There was one poem in here that I really liked. It's this one, Coffee Will Make You Black.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like all of them were very poetic, and they tackled the issue of race in a more underlying and less subtle, or more subtle way. And so it talked about things, and it talked about the culture and what they dealt with. But in Coffee Will Make You Black, this young girl is talking to her grandma and says, "When I was your age," said Grandma, "they used to say, coffee will make you black. Why, I wondered." meant to keep certain colors down, she said. But I fixed them, she said. I ground the coffee berries each morning, then brewed them in a big old pot. Then I sat at my table and drank coffee so thick and black a spoon could stand in it. And so there's a lot of poetic sort of metaphors and symbolism there, but it's also, I feel, one of the ones that tackles sort of social issues and social standings the most.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it too, because I think it's cool that it's like there's, you know, Raspberry Black, and that's representing someone who's African Native American, and the one that's like the Golden Goddess, like they're oh, maybe I lied. I can't remember which one it was. But I think, yeah, it's like this kind of, I like how it dresses, like there's different also like races, I guess, like, or ethnicities in just being African American. Like there's so much more to that, and I think a lot of times we don't really talk about that. We just put them in this like one category, we ignore everything else. And I really like this. It's like, no, there's uniqueness in this as well. And I don't know, I guess I really liked all the different poems. And yeah, I think it's really tackling race, but in a good way that maybe kids may not notice. I think I said like kids might not notice right away, but like maybe like later when they're older and they're like, oh wait, I think I remember reading a poem about this. Like hopefully that it's kind of like, oh, that's really cool that this addressed it in that way.
Yeah, and I think that it's really beneficial for kids because they can see that if you're Black, your skin isn't just the color of chocolate. It isn't just the color of coffee. There's different variations.
Yeah, and I think going off of what you said, Kate, even if, you know, a kid doesn't get to listen to the book in class and talk about it and have all that discussion, even if they were to just pick it up and read it, like one more thing added to the way they view the world. Like I can think of books that portrayed African American culture in a really positive, really cool light that I read as a kid, and like being like, yep, you know, this is normal. Like I wasn't, because I was still like building the way I view the world, and that's just really cool how it affects.
Yeah, for sure.
I really like the poem that the girl didn't look Black, but she was, because it made me remember during our practicum the first quarter of fall, last year in the practicum, there was a little boy who was Indian. Like his grandparents both spoke like the native language, like, and everything, but he didn't look Indian. Like he had like blonde hair and blue eyes or whatever. And I remember all the other boys in the class were like making him cry because like they were like, you are not Indian, you don't look Indian. Like they were being so mean, and just like kids are like one of the biggest like stereotypers. Like, oh, if you don't have dark skin, then you can't be Black. Like, oh, if you don't have dark skin, you can't be Indian. Like, no, he is. Like, it just made me so mad. And so like if like those kids would have read this book, they could have like realized, hey, like just because I don't look like it doesn't mean that I'm not. Like, you know, I could be completely immersed in the culture, speak the language, I just don't have dark skin. That does not mean that I'm not this. Like it, so it just like really stuck to me because I remember that moment so much, and so it was really powerful to me. I liked it.
Well, and what I think really matters too is like how, like, kind of what heritage you grow up in.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's like I don't know a lot of like my background, but I don't think I'm technically like Italian. But on my mom's side, a lot of, like, through my mom's stepdad, like they're all Italian, and like that's really how we were raised. And I mean, we weren't like Catholic, but like they're all Catholic, but like, you know, we're all really loud. We all really like joke around. We love like all these different types of food. We love like cooking, and our families are big, and like that's what I really remember. And it's like, even though I'm not technically maybe Italian, but like that's what I consider part of my culture. And so I think like you're right. You know, they may not look a certain way, but they're growing up in that way, and that's what really is important, I feel like. So, yeah.
What did you guys think about Suitcases Seaweed?
Okay, honestly, I really didn't like it. I just felt like the poems are kind of like, I liked how she gave background for each section and split them up and like had Korean and then Chinese and then American, but I just kind of felt like the poems didn't say a lot it too quickly, but I was like, I don't know. I didn't feel like really
They were
immersed.
average. Like I was talking about how easy it was to use them as a mirror. And like literally anyone could pick up this book, find a poem in there and use it as a mirror. And I feel like there should be a little more resistance if you really want to be multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that there's more things that you could use as a window.
Yeah. I think, I really wanted a lot of them to go, like, you know, and the ones that could, like, really go more in depth and, like, explain things to me, I guess, like, in this type of way. But I just felt like I couldn't really, like, see that. But I mean, it's just because it's, like, this collection of poems. Like, because I know she's done a couple other books. I feel like they might be more, but
I think it probably is one of those books that takes more context. Like if we weren't very familiar with, you know, African American history, then maybe, you know, The Black and the Berry, that book would have been confusing for us because we don't have any context or background knowledge. And so it's understandable that the average American probably has a lot more context for understanding African American literature than they would Asian American literature. Like, I mean, so I obviously would have much more context to understand to be able to connect with what is going on in the books. So I really liked it, but you know, that's because I had all the background knowledge.
What you felt about it, because you have more context than the rest of us.
I really liked it. Yeah. I mean, it was really cool. And I really liked did you guys watch the video of her reading it out loud?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
I watched a little bit of it. I didn't get to watch all of it, but what I did see, I liked.
Yeah, she read one of her poems. It was about her grandpa. And at the end, she said that she really loved reading that poem out loud because every time she read it out loud, she felt like her grandpa was alive again. And I thought that was really cool because, I don't know. I know that like writing and poems and stuff is powerful, but I didn't realize that writing could be like that powerful. But I mean, I guess I kind of did. But yeah, I just thought it was really cool that she said.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked how she had connections to all the 3 different cultures. Like when I first like looked at the like index or whatever, and it said like Korean, Chinese, and American, I was like, how does she know all these? Like, but then I really liked how she like explained, this is my mom, this is my dad, and this is me. And I thought it was cool that she was like celebrating all 3 parts of her heritage, like not just focusing on one side or something. Because I think that from what I've heard and seen and such, it's like a lot of times like some people like lose their culture or they'll like choose one versus like the other ones. And so I just thought it was really cool. I thought the poems were okay. I liked them, but
I think, well, doesn't that what you're saying, Haley, kind of relate to The Black and the Berry, and especially the Snowberries poem? Like just like the Asian American experience isn't, you know, linear. It isn't black and white, and just like African American experience has so many different variations. It's the same with any other culture, like Asian American culture, and so that's what makes it like a authentic multicultural literature.
Yeah, I thought it was definitely authentic. I thought it was like I said in my post I thought it was like a really good book for multicultural, but
and I mean,
and maybe
I could see both sides. Sorry, Kate, go ahead.
I mean, maybe too, it's just I'm so used to maybe books that aren't necessarily, you know, from a like a correct type of multicultural book, and so I'm used to like maybe a white person trying to write about, Asian culture or whatever, and then also like reading this, I'm like, that's not that good. But really it probably is like, high quality, and I'm just like kind of, I don't know, like shocked or whatever to read it and like don't really understand.
Didn't we I can't remember, for some reason this is in my head, did we read like one of the earlier weeks, like someone tried publishing a book or something and they were like, oh no, it's not authentic African American or African enough, like, okay, never mind. But
I don't remember, but it could have been.
They was trying to publish her book, and because she wasn't portraying like everyone to be poor and without cars and like stuff like that, this like white professor was like, no, this isn't good, like it's not actually about Africans. But she grew up in like Nigeria or something, and she was like, how are you supposed to tell me, like I'm the one that grew up there, like in Africa, right. Is a country, it's a continent, there are different countries and there are different places. Like,
I remember that reading.
I think it was a video. I think it was a TED Talk for some reason. Oh yeah, it
was it like wrote the book story one? Like,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Last week, I think. Nope, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was there.
It was there. I really liked that TED Talk, by the way.
Oh, I know. I feel like people all the time like make that mistake of, oh, Africa is a country, and it's like, no. There are several countries in that continent. Thank you very much. I know a couple. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I just thought it was really
so
funny,
sad.
like, just because of like how powerful our stereotypes are that we get like in our society, like we'll think that like what people that have actually grown up and like experience like isn't true because like we believe in the stereotypes so much, like this is how it has to be, but no, there are other places like this is just what we receive from media, like
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just thought it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Into the Native American readings that we had,
oh yeah.
Let's think of Native American when it's actually like hundreds of different ones. Yeah.
The one that's called Thoughts on Teaching Native American Literature. Is that what you're talking about? Or the other one, like the sport, not for sport.
That was part of the jigsaw.
Not for sport. Well, I mean, both of them. It's linked to both of them, but
that one was from the Jigsaw, and that was a really good article just because it went through everything, like every possible excuse that people give as to why they think it's okay to have Indians as a mascot. And so it's things like, oh, we're appreciating the culture, so you should be happy that we're doing this. And it's like, no, when you're calling people Redskins, like, it's a derogatory term. And then there was one good one in there that was like, what if we are more culturally accurate or like culturally appropriate and do things like focus on things like powwows and actual things that actual Indians do. And I'm trying to remember, he had a really good response for it. I'm gonna try and pull it up. But it was like, that is one of the things that's very, it comes from a good place. And I think that's why some people keep doing this, is they think that they're still trying to like appreciate them, or they try to fix it so that it's more culturally accurate. But where was it? He said, oh yeah, what if we drop derogatory comments and clip art and adopt pieces of real Indian culture like powwows and sacred songs? And then he says, though well-intended, these solutions are culturally naive and would exchange one pseudo-culture for another. Powwows are religious as well as social gatherings that give Native American people the opportunity to express our various cultures and strengthen our sense of Native community. To parody such ceremonial gatherings for the purpose of cheering on the team at homecoming would compound the current offensiveness. And so
also,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I just don't think that like, because like for every culture there's like different aspects, like different variations, like the culture in Washington is different than the culture in Texas, and like we're both American, so like I feel like there's no way that we could actually like even with the best intentions actually accurately like represent a culture. Like we'd have to have like 50 million different people being that one mascot because there's so many. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I just don't think it's impossible.
Yeah. So would you say, you know how people are like say like race is a social construct, this is a social construct, like maybe like the categorization of cultures, social construct, like you can pull together by location. You can't, not only to a small extent, and like it's not the 100%.
Like not assuming that all Indians are the same.
Yeah. Or that all Africans are the same, or that all British people are the same, or whatever.
I think that might fall under stereotyping, but this would be a good muddy question at 27 minutes. Having sort of just, I don't know.
Like I feel like you can have like, I don't know, because like I get what you're saying, Catherine. I'm just still trying to process. I'm sorry, but like, you know how like race is a social construct, like being white, blah 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 blah. But you know how there are like ethnicities, so like you can be like British
or European
heritage. So I wonder if like that there's like a similar thing for cultures, like that would be like similar to ethnicity. Not saying that they're like related, but like how there's like Indian culture, but then there's like, but not Indian culture, like this tribe culture, like more specific.
So maybe our muddy question could be like, is cultural categorization
A social construct as well?
Is it a social construct like race, or is it more like ethnicity?
Because like it would make sense more if you made it more specific instead of just saying, "Oh, you're Indian, so you have this culture." Like you're this tribe, so you're. But then that still probably has cultural bias, because if you're like, "Oh, you're from Washington," that means you're a liberal. Well, no, there's people that aren't. Like,
sorry guys, don't mind the dog.
Yeah.
She was like freaking out downstairs, so I brought her up here in the house today. That's Skittle.
Hi, Skittle. I'm sorry, I love dogs.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, I just realized after reading this article, so like there's like a hockey team that I like loved going, and they're called the Winterhawks, and their mascot is like I guess you could call him like a chief, and he has like a headdress. And until like reading like that article, I was like, oh, that's like really racist. Like, and they have like our mascot's like a tomahawk, and it's like this eagle. And I just like never even thought about it because it's like, oh, that's like this sport team I've like grown up with. And then I was like, and they're not called like the Redskins, that that's like immediately like, whoa, don't. Then I like realized
Redskins is like, whoa, let's
wait. But then I was also like, that's not good either. Like, there's, I mean, and I don't think it's not like tribe specific, and there's no like, it's all white guys on the team. So I was like, oh, like I just was like, whoa, and I was like, oh, write a letter to whatever to like encourage them to change the name, and I was like, that's actually a really good idea because what
more I think it's more and this is what I liked about the article was that the responses weren't angry, or they weren't calling people racist. They weren't saying like you're an awful person for having a mascot be an Indian. But they were educational, because a lot of these things like people just don't think about, which is bad to not think about these things, but we have to give them benefit of the doubt that they just didn't think it through all the way. And because like those letters that they send out, similar to the responses that he gave in the article, it's very educational.
Yeah. I feel like just from reading going through the modules in this class, I just keep seeing the same narratives. Like the minority culture is trying to spotlight something that they want changed in that the majority culture is, in charge of, and they're not. No, the minority is never like calling the majority culture like racist or like bad people, but all of that language is like a reaction by the majority culture. Like oh, you're calling me racist, oh, you're calling me a bad person, when like that was never the intention in it, you know, it's really interesting.
And that word intention is huge when it comes to race, I think. And that's something that we have to keep in mind working with kids, is because their intention a lot of times isn't to hurt people or to be racist or to like discriminate against a certain race. I mean, granted, they might have certain ideas from their parents, but with kids, the intention is really just like to figure out why you're different. And I think that also with the whole sports team thing, there's the intention of like, that's not what I intended, but it's what happened. And it's sort of like that whole, but I didn't, she started it. And then you give the whole, but I'm ending it. And it's like, that wasn't what I intended. It's like, yeah, but it's what happened. So we need to focus on what happened.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because people, because it causes a lot of guilt when someone tells you you're doing something wrong or that is hurting people.
And then people go on defense.
Yeah, it's really easy to just take the excuse of, well, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, so I wasn't doing anything wrong. But that doesn't help anything. It only just makes you feel good for a little bit. It doesn't help anything. You need to like talk about it and like try to understand.
Also, with your comment, Nicole, about how like kids are just trying to like actually ask like, why is your skin different? Like, why do you look that way? Like that kind of falls onto like us as teachers, I think, a little bit, to like educate the kids. Like, not everyone is going to look like you. Like, here are some other places around the world. Because like I've seen that with kids that are like in 5th grade. Like, they have never seen an Asian person.
For that,
they have these stereotypes in their head from wherever they're getting them from, like media, or they just are generally curious, but sometimes not. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just, because that shows that like if they're asking those kinds of questions, then they've never been like around different people other than, you know, whatever they are. It's like, I don't know.
And it's also really easy for parents to promote colorblind racism for their kids, because it's really easy for, in the moment, they'll be like, oh, you don't ask people why they're black, or you don't ask people why their skin is dark. And it's like, it's an easy fix in the moment, but then a lot of parents won't come back around and talk about, like, have that discussion with their kid. They're just more appalled by the fact that their kid just went up to some black kid and said, why is your skin dark?
What do you think is like an appropriate response to that question? Like, just telling them it's because they have more melatonin in their skin and that's why? Like, but a kid would be like, what's melatonin? I mean, you can go into that discussion. Is that like the
That is a good idea. That could be another muddy question at 3430. And
it would also depend on like how old the kids are, what the population of your community.
I mean, yeah, would you talk about how they have like a different cultural background or something, or?
It depends on how old they are, but like, what are some appropriate responses to kids being generally curious about race?
Yeah, because I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind.
Okay, guys, hold on. I'll be right back.
That's fine. Before we wrap up, does anyone have any final thoughts?
How would you deal with like, because so this happened in the ELL class, that like we were in a practicum that had all Latino heritage students. They were all ELL students, and all their parents worked at this farm that was owned by Asian Americans, and they treated them like really, really badly, like barely paid them anything per hour, and like it was really bad conditions and everything. And we had a teaching partner, like one of a Woodring students, Sung actually, was there, and the kids were being really racist towards him because like the only interaction they've had with Asian American people was through the camp that their parents work at. So their parents come home, say all these things about people that they're working for, and then the kids come and then they see someone that looks like the people that their parents talk about, and so their natural reaction is to react like their parents did. So like we had a really hard time figuring out how to respond and like how to deal with that, because we don't want to tell the kids like, oh, you're being racist. Obviously you wouldn't say that to a kid, but like they're gonna take that back home and tell their parents, and their parents are gonna either like, I don't know, it was a really difficult situation. So yeah. parents.
Maybe just like you don't have to like put a label on anything or like use any technical terms, but just explaining it for how it is. Like, you know, bad people and good people who, look similar, but they're all people and
Yeah.
Or sort of focusing on like how your race or your ethnicity doesn't have a lot to do with your personality.
Yeah.
So,
like everyone's different. Just because you think this one teacher is mean doesn't mean that every single teacher is mean. Like.
And I would sort of compare it to other things of like, if you, I don't know, like, well, something that they would know is like classmates.
Yeah.
They might have like, okay, is there anyone in your class that you think is mean to you? And then they'll probably give you a name, and then they're like, okay, but do you think that because he's mean to you that all your classmates are mean? And it's like, no, it's the same thing with this. And so sort of like going with what you know that they know.
Or like, if you got bitten by like,
Cat.
a terrier, does that mean that all terriers want to bite you? Some terriers are nice, some terriers are not as nice.
All terriers want to bite you, obviously.
All terriers want to bite you.
But yeah, no, that's a good point. It's like making those differences and stuff.
But yeah, I think that's a good idea. Obviously, upon reflection, it seems a lot easier than when you're in the moment and kids are saying stuff.
No,
you're like,
yeah.
I have this.
But yeah, I think those are good answers. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No.
Okay.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right.
See y'all.
Bye, guys.